The Lost Myths. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless civilizations, each with their own legends and stories passed down through the ages. Some were tales of mighty warriors, while others spoke of gods and strange alien races. But among all the myths that circulated within the Galactic Council, there was one story that no one took seriously. It was an old story, passed down from generation to generation, telling of a race of humans, an ancient species that had once roamed the stars, only to disappear without a trace. The Council had heard these stories many times before, dismissing them as mere fairy tales. The records they held were filled with myths and unsubstantiated claims, and they all pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had been lost, forgotten by time, and no longer existed. For centuries, the myth of humanity remained just that, a myth. No evidence, no sightings, and no whispers of their existence had ever been confirmed. But one fateful day, something changed. It began with a faint signal. At first, it was barely noticeable, a strange anomaly in the deep reaches of space. At first, it was nothing more than background noise. But over time, the signal grew stronger. Someone, or something, was out there. The Galactic Council was puzzled, but they quickly dispatched a research team to investigate. Their orders were clear: determine the origin of the signal and assess whether it posed any threat to the galaxy. The team, aboard a small reconnaissance ship, traveled deep into uncharted space. As they ventured farther away from the familiar star systems, they began to sense something peculiar in the air. It was almost as if the very fabric of space around them was charged with tension, as if something old and forgotten was awakening. The crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, but they had no idea what or who was out there. As they neared the source of the signal, their instruments began to pick up strange readings. There were signs of an ancient technology, one that hadn't been seen in millennia. The signal was unmistakably human in origin. "What is this?" Captain Theron asked, his voice filled with confusion and awe. His fingers hovered over the controls, trying to decipher the readings on the screen. It didn't make sense. The technology was too advanced to be a simple remnant of humanity's past. "Are you sure this is human?" Lieutenant Kara asked, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. "I thought the Council deemed them a myth. There's no way this could be their technology, Captain." But there it was, the undeniable evidence. The same patterns, the same energy signatures. They were human, but how? The crew exchanged uneasy glances, none of them able to answer the question that lingered in the air. How could humanity still be alive? Captain Theron made a decision. "We're going in." They set course for the source of the signal, traveling through the vast, empty expanse of space. The tension grew with each passing minute, as if the very stars themselves were holding their breath. The signal led them to a seemingly empty section of space, where nothing but the cold void stretched out in all directions. There was no planet, no ship, just a strange gravitational pull that seemed to warp reality itself. And then they saw it. At first, it was a small dot on the horizon, barely visible against the backdrop of space. But as they approached, the shape became clearer, a massive object, large enough to be seen from light years away. It was a ship. No, not just a ship, an armada. A fleet built with technology far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. It was unlike any warship in the galaxy, with sleek, angular designs and glowing energy cores that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. The crew stared in disbelief. This was no myth. This was real. "Send out a distress signal," Kara said, her voice trembling. "We need backup." But Captain Theron didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the massive fleet ahead, his mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. The signal had led them here, but now the question was, what were they supposed to do with this information? Suddenly, the ship's comm system flared to life, interrupting the silence. A voice came through, deep and clear. "This is the fleet of humanity," the voice said, its tone calm and powerful. "We have returned." The crew froze. Humanity. They had returned. It was the voice of a leader, someone who had been waiting for this moment for a long time. But who were they? And why had they come back now? Before Captain Theron could react, a strange sensation washed over the crew. It was as if they were no longer alone in the universe. Something had shifted, something ancient and powerful. A sense of both dread and awe settled over the crew. The weight of history pressed down on them, as if the very foundation of the galaxy had been shaken. The captain turned to his crew, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "Prepare for contact." The myths of humanity had always been laughed at, ridiculed, and dismissed. But as the crew of the reconnaissance ship stared at the massive fleet, they realized that the legends were not just stories. They were warnings. Warnings of a power that had been hidden for far too long. And now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences of ignoring those myths. As the fleet moved closer, the crew knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The lost legends. In the far reaches of the galaxy, legends were whispered like the wind, a long-forgotten tale of a species that once walked the stars, only to fade into the vast emptiness of space. This was the story of humanity. No one truly believed it anymore. The Galactic Council had long dismissed the idea of humans as nothing more than a myth, a fantasy created by ancient minds, long lost to time. Even those who had once pondered the stories thought of them as mere children's tales, with no real weight behind them. But what if those legends were real? The galaxy had seen many species rise and fall. Alien races that once dominated the stars have been erased from history by wars, disasters, and their own selfish ambitions. New species had filled the void, establishing themselves as the dominant powers of the galaxy. But for as long as anyone could remember, humanity was nothing more than a myth, a fleeting memory left behind by the ancients. It was said that humans had once been powerful and intelligent, their ships massive, their technology advanced, but no one knew for sure. The records were murky, fragmented by time, and lost to the great expanse of space. The Galactic Council ruled over most of the known universe, and they cared little for the myths of old. They had their own concerns. The galaxy was filled with its own problems: alien politics, territorial disputes, and the constant struggle for power among the stars. They had no time for stories of long-lost civilizations. Humanity, if it had ever existed, was nothing more than a forgotten footnote in the grand history of the galaxy. But all that was about to change. It started with a strange signal, something faint and distant, barely noticeable among the hum of cosmic radiation. At first it was thought to be a glitch, a malfunction in one of the many communication satellites spread across the galaxy. But as days turned into weeks, the signal grew stronger, more defined. It was clear now. Someone, or something, was sending a message. A few isolated individuals took notice. The signal's strange pattern suggested it wasn't natural. It wasn't just random noise. It was a message, an intentional communication from somewhere in the depths of space. And as it grew louder, more and more people began to pay attention. The Galactic Council, curious but still skeptical, ordered a group of researchers to investigate. A small ship was dispatched to the source of the signal. The crew, a mix of scientists and engineers, was tasked with uncovering the origin of this strange message. Their journey took them deeper into the unknown regions of space, past star systems no one had ventured to in centuries. As they neared the source of the signal, the crew began to sense something, an eerie silence that seemed to stretch on forever. It was as if the very universe around them had grown still, waiting for something to happen. The closer they got, the stronger the signal became. It was no longer just an anomaly. It was a call, and it was coming from a place that no one expected. Hidden in the dark corners of the galaxy, far from the reaches of the Council's power, was a forgotten world. A planet, once teeming with life, now lay in ruins, its surface scarred by time and neglect. The crew descended upon the planet. Their senses heightened. They were about to uncover something that had been buried for centuries. They approached a massive structure, an ancient building that stood as a silent reminder of a past long gone. As they ventured inside, their hearts raced with excitement and fear. Inside the building, they found evidence, technology far more advanced than anything they had ever seen. It was old, yes, but it was unmistakable. Human technology. The researchers were stunned. They had expected to find ruins, artifacts, remnants of a lost civilization, but this was something else. The technology was still operational, somehow preserved through the eons. It was as if humanity had simply vanished, leaving behind their legacy for anyone who dared to find it. And then, as they explored further, they discovered something even more astonishing. A ship, still intact and ready for flight. A massive warship, its design unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It was clear now. Humanity had once been more than just a myth. They were real, and their power was unlike anything anyone had imagined. The crew stood in awe, unsure of what to do next. The Galactic Council had long since dismissed humanity as a mere tale. But now, they had found the truth. The legends were not just stories. They were history, waiting to be uncovered. As the crew prepared to send a transmission back to the Council, the air around them seemed to shift. The silence that had enveloped the planet suddenly felt oppressive, as if they were being washed. The warship, long dormant, began to hum with life. The signal they had followed was no accident. It had led them here for a reason. As the researchers made their way back to their ship, a strange sense of foreboding settled over them. They had uncovered something incredible, something that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. But they also realized something else. They had awakened something ancient, something powerful. And now, humanity's return was no longer just a myth. It was a reality. The Galactic Council would soon learn that the stories of humanity's power were not just tales. They were warnings. And soon, everyone would know the truth. The forgotten legends of humanity had returned to haunt the galaxy. The awakening warship. The research crew stood frozen in the massive chamber of the ancient warship. The walls hummed with energy, pulsing like a heartbeat long thought to be silent. Dust had settled over the controls, yet the displays flickered to life, as if the ship itself had sensed their presence. Dr. Relka, the lead scientist, took a hesitant step forward, her eyes scanning the symbols glowing on the console. "This shouldn't be happening," she murmured. "The ship is waking up." Commander Julik, a hardened officer from the Galactic Council's military division, tightened his grip on his sidearm. "We should leave," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with." But the ship had already decided. A deep mechanical hum filled the chamber. The floor beneath them vibrated as dormant systems roared back to life. Rusted machinery, untouched for centuries, moved with precision. Screens displayed maps of star systems long forgotten, weapon diagnostics loaded one by one. And in the heart of the ship, something even more terrifying happened. A message began transmitting. Unauthorized access detected. A voice echoed through the chamber, deep and synthetic. Human command override. Pending. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Humans. That word sent chills down their spines. It had been centuries since anyone had heard of them outside of myths. Yet this ship, ancient but still operational, recognized only one authority: humanity. Dr. Relka's fingers trembled as she activated her communicator. "Control, do you read me? This is Relka. We found something. Something alive." Static. Then a distorted reply. "Repeat that, Dr. Relka. Alive. What do you mean?" Before she could respond, the warship's central console lit up with a final sequence. A new transmission, not directed to them, but sent into the vastness of space. A single ominous phrase flashed across the screen. Human fleet status. Awaiting orders. The warship wasn't alone. Somewhere in the galaxy, something or someone was listening. The hum of the warship's systems faded into a tense silence. The crew was still, their eyes wide with disbelief. Dr. Relka's hand hovered over the communication panel, unsure of what to do next. The phrase had sent a shiver through her spine, and she wasn't alone in that feeling. Commander Julik's face had gone pale, his usually stoic expression now a mask of confusion and concern. "Are we sure about this?" Julik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can it be true? Can humanity really still be out there?" Relka didn't answer immediately. She stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the blinking phrase, "Human fleet status," awaiting orders. It didn't make sense. How could humanity have disappeared for so long only to return in this way? She tapped her communicator again, voice trembling. "Control, please respond. We need backup now. This ship, it's operational. And it seems like it's waiting for something." Static crackled on the line. The response was slow, distorted. "Understood, Dr. Relka. We're tracking your location. Hold tight. We'll be there within a few hours." But Relka could sense the panic in the voice on the other end. The Galactic Council, as composed as it appeared, had been caught completely off guard by this discovery. Humanity, the once mythical species believed to have vanished or perished, had just reappeared in the most unsettling of ways. Commander Julik took a few steps forward, his boots echoing on the cold metal floor. If this ship is waiting for orders from humans, then where are the humans? Dr. Relka took a deep breath, fighting the rising sense of dread within her. "That's what we need to find out," she replied. "And we need to act fast. If this ship is calling for help, then it's possible that there are others out there." A low rumble vibrated through the walls, drawing their attention back to the ship's core. The warship had come to life in a way that seemed almost intentional, as if it were waiting for something or someone. Suddenly, the communication panel flickered again, displaying a new message: "Human fleet status. Awakening." The words seemed to pierce the stillness like a warning. The warship wasn't just alive. It was actively searching, sending out signals into the unknown void of space. And if there was one thing they all knew, it was that a fleet like this wasn't meant to be forgotten. The silence in the room grew heavy as the crew realized the magnitude of what they were dealing with. Humanity, once thought to be a mere myth, was making a return. And this warship, their warship, was leading the way. "I don't like this," Julik muttered. "We don't know who or what else might be out there. The last thing we need is for this ship to make contact with whoever is listening to it." Relka's mind raced. "We need to find out who they're calling. We need to know what humanity's involvement is, if there's still a fleet out there." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Could it be true? Could humanity have left such an indelible mark on the galaxy that it was still sending out distress signals, still waiting for a command, even centuries after their supposed disappearance? The warship's systems flickered again, and another message flashed across the screen. "Command. Initiate." And just like that, the warship's engines hummed to life, slowly but surely. The ground shook beneath them as its enormous frame began to stir, as though waking from a long, deep sleep. The silence of the room was broken by the mechanical whirring and the deep rumble of systems coming online. "We need to move," Julik said quickly. "We can't let this thing wake up fully. We don't know what it's capable of." Dr. Relka nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to find out what had happened to humanity, and more importantly, what had become of their fleet. The answers lay somewhere within this ship, and perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy's fate rested on them. But as the warship began to slowly move, a new thought crept into her mind, a thought that caused her stomach to tighten with fear. What if humanity had been waiting for this moment all along? What if this was the signal they had been sending into the galaxy for centuries? And what if the fleet wasn't just coming for answers? What if it was coming to reclaim its place as the galaxy's most powerful force? As the crew hurried to escape the warship's control room, Relka couldn't shake the feeling that they had just set something in motion, something that no one in the galaxy could stop. The whispers of human legends had been nothing but a warning. And now, humanity was back. The warship moved. It was slow at first, just a whisper of motion, barely perceptible to the naked eye. But the vibrations beneath their feet confirmed it. The massive, ancient human warship was coming to life, shaking off the dust of centuries as if it had only been asleep, not abandoned. Dr. Relka's breath caught in her throat as she gripped the edge of the control panel. "It's moving," she whispered. "It's actually moving." Commander Julik clenched his fists. "We need to shut it down before." Before he could finish, the ship's lighting changed. A deep crimson glow filled the corridors, pulsing like a heartbeat. The screens across the control room flickered once more, and a new message appeared. Human fleet awakening. Synchronization in progress. Relka's hands shook as she typed frantically, trying to override whatever was happening. But the ship ignored her, its systems operating on a command far older and far stronger than anything she could input. Julik turned sharply. "Who is it sensing with? Humanity is gone. This ship should have no one to contact." A cold thought settled over them. "What if they're not gone?" Relka asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Silence. For centuries, the Galactic Council had dismissed humans as a lost race, a legend buried under the weight of history. But what if that legend had only been waiting for the right signal? What if the remnants of their fleet had never truly died? Julik activated his communicator. "Control, do you read me? The ship is waking up. We need a full shutdown order. Now." Static. Then, finally, a response, one that made his blood run cold. "Commander, we're detecting multiple new energy signatures across the sector. They match pre-collapse human technology." Relka felt a chill creep down her spine. The fleet wasn't just awakening. It was responding. The ship's exterior plating shifted, massive panels locking into place. A deep hum reverberated through its hull, echoing like an ancient war drum. The once abandoned vessel had just declared itself active again. And it wasn't alone. Julik's communicator crackled again. "Sir, we have visuals. You need to see this." A hologram flickered to life in front of them. The vastness of space stretched out in every direction, filled with distant stars and planetary clusters. But among them, dark shapes were emerging. Dozens, then hundreds. Massive, silent ships, their outlines barely illuminated against the void. Human warships. Lost for centuries. Forgotten by history. Returning. Julik felt his throat tighten. This isn't possible." Relka turned to him, her face pale. "It doesn't matter if it's possible." She pointed at the screen. "It's happening." A new message appeared on the ship's control panel. "Fleet status. Operational. Awaiting orders." The weight of those words pressed against them like a storm waiting to break. Who had sent the order? And more importantly, who would stop them? The stars in the distance twinkled silently, but on the bridge of the forgotten warship, there was nothing but noise. The systems hummed with life, each vibration in the floor echoing through the ship's darkened halls. But it wasn't just the ship that was awakening. Something far bigger was stirring, something they weren't prepared for. Julik couldn't tear his eyes away from the massive holographic display showing the fleet. The sheer size of the ships was staggering, and the fact that there were so many of them made his blood run cold. There were no human voices, no signs of life on any of them, but their power was undeniable. The fleet had been asleep for centuries, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. But now, it was awake. And something told him that this wasn't just about the ships. They had come for something else. He turned to Relka, her hands trembling as she typed commands into the console. "Do you think the others can feel it?" he asked. Relka didn't answer at first. She was too focused, her brow furrowed in concentration as her fingers moved over the controls. The ship seemed to respond to her, as though it understood her every command. But there was something else, something deeper. "Do you hear that?" she finally asked, her voice low. Julik's heart skipped a beat as he listened carefully. At first, it was faint, a deep hum that seemed to come from within the very fabric of space itself. But it wasn't just the warship, it was the entire fleet. The hum grew louder, vibrating in the air around them. It was as if the ships were speaking, or maybe calling out. "No," Julik murmured. "They're not just waking up. They're communicating." "Not communicating with us," Relka said. "Something else, something even older." Suddenly, the holographic map shifted. The fleet was not alone in the sector anymore. There were other ships, smaller, quicker, alien vessels that had begun to swarm around the massive human armada. They were too many to count, their ships darting like insects across the display, forming a tight circle around the fleet. Julik felt his stomach drop. "Who are they?" Relka's fingers flew over the controls, trying to identify the ships, but the data streams were fragmented. None of their sensors could make sense of the patterns. There was something interfering with the readings, something they couldn't decipher. "We need to find out," Julik said, his voice strained. Relka nodded, her face pale. "But we have a bigger problem right now." "Bigger?" Julik asked, his eyes narrowing. She gestured to the screen. "Those ships, they're not just surrounding the fleet. They're waiting. And they're not human." A cold realization washed over Julik. These ships weren't here to communicate. They weren't here to trade or negotiate. They were here for one reason: to fight. Relka's voice shook as she turned to him. "The galaxy doesn't know about the humans, Julik. They think they were just a myth." "But they're wrong," he muttered, clenching his fists. Relka continued. "And now these alien factions, whatever they are, they're preparing for something. Something bigger. We need to understand what it is before it's too late." Julik's heart raced as he turned back to the display. The dark shapes surrounding the fleet were getting closer. It was as if they were closing in, waiting for a signal, for an order. The humans might have been absent for centuries, but their legacy was alive. And now, that legacy was about to be tested in ways no one could have imagined. "Activate the communication array," Julik ordered, his voice firm. Relka complied, and a low, metallic sound filled the room as the ship's communication systems powered up. Static crackled through the speakers before a voice, distorted but unmistakable, echoed through the bridge. "Human fleet, awaiting orders." Relka's fingers froze above the controls, eyes wide. "Did that just?" "It did," Julik said, a cold fury building in his chest. "And the galaxy has no idea what it's about to face." The message wasn't just for them. It was a declaration, a signal that the humans weren't gone, weren't a myth. And now, their fleet had returned to make its mark on the galaxy. A storm was coming, and it wasn't the humans who should be afraid. It was everyone else. The void of space trembled with tension. The human fleet, once thought to be a mere legend, now loomed over the battlefield like a storm waiting to strike. Thousands of massive warships, sleek and dark, floated in perfect formation. Their hulls bore the marks of time, yet they stood unyielding, as if defying history itself. Julik and Relka watched in stunned silence from their vessel. The entire galaxy had whispered about humanity's power, their unmatched ability to wage war, but no one had believed it. They were myths, stories told to scare young cadets into obedience. And yet, here they were, real, undeniable, and ready. Across the sector, alien fleets had arrived. Some were there to witness, others to conquer, and a few, Julik suspected, to beg for mercy before it was too late. The communication panel crackled again. That same voice, calm, commanding, and utterly human, spoke once more. "Human fleet, standing by for engagement." A shudder ran down Julik's spine. These weren't ships left to drift aimlessly in space. They were waiting. For centuries, they had been waiting. "Who are they waiting for?" Relka whispered. Julik didn't answer. He was staring at the tactical display, where new signals had just appeared on the edge of the system. The symbols were unfamiliar, but the intent was clear. Reinforcements. The aliens had not come unprepared. A second fleet, larger than before, was approaching. The galaxy was terrified of what it did not understand, and when fear took hold, it always led to one thing: violence. A booming transmission cut through the air. This time, it wasn't human. "This is Supreme Admiral Xal of the Varrock Dominion. Stand down and surrender your vessels. The galaxy will not bow to ghosts." Silence filled the bridge. Julik exchanged a glance with Relka. The Varrock were one of the most dominant militaries in the known galaxy. Their fleet alone had crushed civilizations, bent entire species to their will. And yet, Julik could hear the slight hesitation in Xal's voice. The Varrock may have been powerful, but even they feared the unknown. Then the human voice responded. "You misunderstand, Supreme Admiral. We do not ask the galaxy to bow. We only ask, who will stand when the storm arrives?" The line went dead. And then, without warning, the first human warship moved. A single battleship, larger than any Julik had ever seen, advanced toward the enemy fleet with an effortless glide. No lights flashed, no weapons powered up, just pure, silent intimidation. The Varrock hesitated. Then they opened fire. The first barrage of plasma struck the human ship and disappeared. The shields held firm, absorbing the energy without a single sign of damage. The second volley followed, then the third. Still, the warship remained unarmed. Julik watched in awe. The stories had been true. Humanity's technology was beyond anything the galaxy had seen. And now it was awake. Then came the response. Without sound, without warning, the human fleet moved as one. They didn't need threats. They didn't need posturing. They simply attacked. The darkness of space erupted in light. Human weapons, unseen for centuries, roared to life. Beams of energy sliced through enemy ships as if they were made of paper. Explosions blossomed in the void, and panic spread through the Varrock fleet. For the first time in history, the predators of the galaxy were prey. Julik felt a strange emotion rise within him. Fear, awe, admiration. The galaxy had doubted the humans, had erased them from history, had whispered their names like ghosts of a forgotten era. But now they were here, and they were unstoppable. The legend of humanity had returned, and this time, the galaxy would never forget.